The Pokeball, one of the most recognizable items in pop culture. Seen in video games, the anime, on the back of trading cards, and much more. This very simple design stands as a beacon for the Pokemon franchise, almost up there with Pikachu himself. Being a fan of Pokeballs myself, to the point of having a whole collection of Pikachu caught in every ball possible, I thought it would be fun to go over a bit of their history. When people think of the Pokeball, most times they will first think of the classic red and white Pokeball, being not just a Pokeball, but the Pokeball. However, they aren't the only Pokeballs to exist. In fact, there's a lot more, and they can get a little weird. In the first generation of Pokemon games, there were 5 different types of Pokeballs. You had the main 4, the Pokeball itself, the classic red and white with the black middle band. The Great Ball, which are blue and white with red pieces protruding from the top half, and are slightly better at catching than the standard Pokeballs at 1.5 times. The Ultra Ball, which is black and white with a striking yellow H on the black part, due to the Ultra Ball being called the Hyper Ball in Japan, and are even better at catching Pokemon at 2 times. And finally, we have the Master Ball, which is a purple and white ball with pink protrusions and a notable M front and center. This ball will catch any Pokemon without fail. Outside of the main 4, there's one more ball, the Safari Ball, which has the classic white bottom and camouflage on the top. This ball has the same properties as the Great Ball, and for now, are exclusive to the Safari Zone. This is all there is in the first generation of games, nice and simple, and sets the foundation for Pokeballs to come. Moving on to Generation 2, the main 4 are still around, as will become the norm. In the second generation of games, however, there is no Safari Zone, meaning that the Safari Ball unfortunately does not return. In its place, we have the Park Ball, a special Pokeball used during the bug catching contest. It's like a bluish-greenish color on top half and has a white bottom, with 2 red markings on the top and 4 green markings, 2 on top, 2 on the bottom, making a bug-like design. This is the first Pokeball on the list to not have a pure white bottom. Mechanically, it's just like the Great and Safari Ball. Now moving on to the most interesting collection of Pokeballs, we have the Apricorn Pokeballs, also known by fans as Kurt Balls. These Pokeballs are made by giving apricorns to Kurt. First up, there's the Fastball, made from white apricorns. A red and white ball with a yellow lightning bolt-like shape on top and 2 yellow circles on the sides that are both on the top and bottom. This ball is intended to work well on Pokemon that can flee, giving a 4 times catch rate. However, due to a mistake, only works on Pokemon with a 10% chance to flee, meaning it only works well on Magnemite, Grimer, and Tangela. Our next Kurt Ball is the Level Ball, made from red apricorns. The top half of this ball has 2 color blocks, top of it being black and the bottom being yellow, with a red V on it, and has the standard white bottom. The ball gets more effective the higher your currently active Pokemon's level is compared to the wild Pokemon's, going all the way up to 8 times. In Gen 2, this ball does not take into account the HP and status of the wild Pokemon, only using the level to calculate the ball's effectiveness. Moving on to the next ball, we come to the Lure Ball, made using blue apricorns. The ball has a blue top half, which sometimes shows as green, with a red diamond pattern going down the middle with vertical yellow lines. The Lure Ball works more effectively on Pokemon reeled in while fishing, giving a 3 times catch rate modifier. Onto our 4th ball here, we have the Heavy Ball, made from black apricorns. It has a gray top with blue spherical protrusions and a white bottom. This ball becomes more effective the heavier the wild Pokemon is, ranging from -20 all the way to +40 being added to the catch rate. The 5th Kurt Ball is the Love Ball, made with the pink apricorn. This ball has a pink top with a lighter pink heart alongside some white outlining and a white protrusion, and a white bottom. This ball is intended to be massively effective against Pokemon that have the opposite gender of your active Pokemon, giving an 8 times boost. However, this boost is instead only granted if the wild Pokemon is the same gender as your active Pokemon. Kurt Ball number 6 is the Friend Ball, made with green apricorns. With a green top half that has 4 red protrusions and a yellow protrusion formed in a semicircle around the ball's button, and it has a white bottom. When used to catch a Pokemon, this ball will cause the new catch to have a friendship stat of 200. Lastly, we have the Moon Ball, made using the yellow apricorn. The top half of this ball is half blue, half black, meeting in the middle with a zigzag pattern, with a yellow crescent moon on top, with the classic white bottom. This Pokeball is supposed to have increased effectiveness catching Pokemon in evolution lines that evolve with the Moonstone, which at this point would only be Nidoran female, Nidoran male, Clefairy, and Jigglypuff lines, giving a 4 times modifier. However, due to a mistake, this ball checks to see if the Pokemon evolves with a Burn Heal. I have gripes with the Kurt Balls. Not only do almost half of them not even function properly, there's not much reason to use most of them. For the Fastball, there isn't a whole lot of Pokemon that can flee, only 21 according to Bulbapedia, and that includes Pokemon like the legendary birds, which aren't even catchable in the Gen 2 games. The level ball is good in concept, but to get max effectiveness, your Pokemon has to be 4 times the level of the wild Pokemon, leading to its best uses being for Pokemon that are lower leveled, which are usually already pretty easy to catch. The Lure Ball is cool and it works, and actually has a good pool of usefulness. The Heavy Ball is also good in concept, but to know how effective it would be requires knowledge that you can't get just from being in the battle. Add in that if Pokemon is light enough, it actually makes it harder to catch. It's a very niche use by the average player. Moving on to the Love Ball. Not only is it super useless given its actual function, its intended use only has benefit on an average of 50% of the time, making most battles a coin flip on whether or not it will be useful. The Friend Ball is probably the best ball mechanically out of the bunch, as it allows for the player to catch a Pokemon that evolves with Friendship and evolve it pretty much right away after capture, allowing you to skip what is possibly the worst evolution method in the series. Finally, we have the Moon Ball. Not only does it not work for anything, if it did, it only works on 4 evolution lines. Given that the final evolutions aren't in the wild, and baby Pokemon were breeding only, that grants 6 Pokemon that would be beneficial to use this ball on. The only saving grace that this ball has is that it has a really nice design. Outside of the uses of these balls, some of the required apricorns are really weird choices. White apricorns make the mostly red and yellow fastball, which happens to be the curt ball with the least amount of white on it, while the red apricorn makes the mostly yellow and black level ball. The gray and blue heavy ball is made from the black apricorn, while the black and blue moon ball is made from the yellow apricorn. Adding in the fact that you can't buy these balls, but have to get them made by Kurt, which takes real-world time for them to finish, they're really just a bunch of Pokeballs that are going to get ignored and unused by most people because the weight just really isn't worth it. Before finishing with Gen 2, there's one last ball to mention, the GS ball. Having a golden top and a silver bottom, usually with markings resembling a G and an S. This ball is not a standard Pokeball, but instead a key item, used to activate the Celebi event in Crystal. This ball doesn't show up in any other game, but its design is definitely a fan favorite. With Generation 2 done, it's time to move on to the 3rd generation. Gen 3 is where a very big change is made. Pokeballs are no longer different solely for their catching benefits, but now they also show up on a Pokemon summary, leading to the ability of matching your Pokemon to a specific Pokeball solely for the style points. This also means that Pokeballs actually look like what they're supposed to in-game, and even have special animations when sending out a Pokemon that differs from ball to ball. Generation 3 of course has the main 4, which I will now refer to as the main 5 with the introduction of the Premier Ball. This ball has a white top and bottom, with the black band in the middle becoming red. This ball works the exact same as the regular Pokeball, and can be obtained only when buying 10 or more regular Pokeballs from a Pokemart. Whether you buy 10 or 99 at once, you get 1 free Premier Ball with your purchase, so to maximize your Pokeball purchasing, always buy your standard Pokeballs in purchases of 10. Also to note, since Fire Red and Leaf Green are faithful to a fault, the only way to get these balls is to trade for a Pokemon holding one from a Hoenn or Ore game. Before covering the rest of the new Pokeballs from Gen 3, it's important to note that the Park Ball and the 7 Kurt Balls did not make the jump between generations, however some of the new Pokeballs fill in for the actually useful ones. Up first we have the Net Ball, the top half being a teal color with a black net pattern protruding from it, and the classic white bottom. This ball has an increased effectiveness when used on water or bug type Pokemon, giving a 3 times modifier to the catch rate. Next is the Dive Ball, which is a Pokeball that transitions from dark blue at the bottom to light blue and white at the top. This ball gives a 3.5 times boost when catching Pokemon underwater. Our next new ball is the Nest Ball, having a top half consisting of stripes in 2 different shades of green and a white bottom. This ball has an increased effectiveness against lower leveled wild Pokemon, using an equation to determine effectiveness, but drops to the catch rate of a regular Pokeball by level 30. Moving on, we have the Repeat Ball. Looking like a regular Pokeball at its base, the top half has a yellow circular chain going down the middle with black spots in it. This ball is intended for use on Pokemon you already have registered in your Pokedex, giving a 3 times catch rate boost if you do. Up next is the Timer Ball, a mostly white ball with orange on the sides and black on the very top with an orange fin. This Pokeball gets increased effectiveness the longer the battle has been going on, capping at 4 times boost around 30 turns. Lastly for the new Gen 3 Pokeballs is the Luxury Ball. This is an all-black ball with a golden middle band with white, red, and gold striping. Unlike other balls, the trim around the middle band also protrudes. When a Pokemon is caught in this ball, it receives an extra friendship point every time it earns friendship. Alongside these new balls, thanks to the return of Safari Zones, the Safari Ball makes its return after not being featured in Generation 2. It works the same way as it did, being a reskinned Great Ball only used in the Safari Zone. This covers every Pokeball in the 3rd generation, and now it's time to move on to Gen 4. Generation 4 has quite the selection of Pokeballs for you to choose from, as every single Pokeball in Generation 3 is still around. To start us off, let's go over the new Pokeballs. First, we have the Dusk Ball. This ball is black all over with green circles, and has an orange middle band. This Pokeball has an increased effectiveness in caves and at night, giving a 3.5 times boost. Next up is the Heal Ball. This ball is pink all over with some yellow/cream colored markings with a blue middle band and a purple button. This Pokeball will fully heal the Pokemon it catches, restoring its HP, PP, and clearing any status. It is important to note that a Pokemon getting sent to the PC also has this happen automatically, so this ball is really only effective if you have an open slot in your party. Our final new standard Pokeball is the Quick Ball. Being blue all over with a yellow X pattern, this Pokeball gets a 4x boost if used in the first turn of battle. Generation 4 also introduced 2 more Pokeballs, but they aren't the same as your standard Pokeballs. First up is the Cherish Ball. This ball is a deep red all over with black accents, but also isn't a proper sphere, having its sides indented. This Pokeball is unobtainable in-game as it is used for event Pokemon only. A fun little fact, the first Pokemon to be distributed in a Cherish Ball was Tropius. The other Pokeball here is the Park Ball. No, not the Gen 2 Park Ball, a completely different one. This one has a yellow top and a white bottom, with a blue middle band. These balls are used exclusively in the Pal Park catching show. They have a 100% catch rate, however they do not stay as the caught Pokemon retains the ball they were transferred in. This ball has not been seen since the Pal Park, which is a shame, as I'm a big fan of its design. Now that we have the new Pokeballs covered, I think it's time to talk about some of the returning Pokeballs. It's no secret that Generation 4 gave us remakes of the Johto games, which means the Generation 2 Pokeballs make their return. To start us off, let's talk about the Sport Ball. Well, this is the new form of the original Park Ball. Not only has its name changed, but so has its design. Instead of its original unique design, it is now just a regular Pokeball with a Pokeball decal on it. The global link art for it replaces the decal with just an S. The ball still works the same way as it did in Gen 2, a reskin Great Ball that's only available in the bug catching contest. Also returning are the 7 Kurt Balls. Unlike the Sport Ball, all of them still have the same names and designs. They are all still obtained in the same way as they were in Gen 2. However, they are generally fixed or have been given new traits if needed. First up, we got the Fastball. Due to Pokemon outside of Roamers no longer being able to run away, the Fastball has been changed to give a 4x catch rate modifier to Pokemon with a base speed over 100. Next, we have the Level Ball, which now takes into account the wild Pokemon's HP and status alongside the level difference. The Lure Ball has stayed the exact same. Unfortunately for the Heavy Ball, it has a new issue, which, due to a mistake, causes all Pokemon that would get the +0 to the catch rate instead get the -20 catch rate, making it even more niche to use. The Love Ball was simply fixed, so that if the wild Pokemon is the same species and opposite gender of your active Pokemon, the ball gets an 8x boost. The Friend Ball is also the same as it was. Finally, the Moon Ball now properly looks for Pokemon in evolution lines that evolve with Moonstones instead of Burn Heals. Despite a new Pokemon being introduced that can evolve with the Moonstone, Skitty is unable to be caught in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, so its pool of catchable Pokemon stays the same as it would have been in Generation 2. It is important to note that Pokemon cannot hold any of the Apricorn Balls due to them not being coded into the Sinnoh games. One final thing to note before being finished with the 4th generation, due to there no longer being underwater spots with the removal of Dive as an HM, Dive Balls now give a 3.5x boost when catching a Pokemon that is found while surfing or fishing. Because of this, Dive Balls cannot be bought, having the main way of obtaining them being through either transferring from Generation 3 or from the Pokemon News Press in Sinnoh. With that said, it's time to move on to the 5th generation. Generation 5, like with many aspects, is a bit of an oddball in regards to Pokeballs, as it only adds one new Pokeball and removes a fair amount. The new Pokeball added is the Dream Ball, which design-wise is similar to the Dive Ball but with pinks and purples. This is a very special ball in that it's only usable in the entry forest to catch Pokemon sent to your game from the Dream World. The Dream Ball acts as a Master Ball in this situation. Now for the unobtainable balls. They are still all in the game, as in a transfer Pokemon will still show as being caught in them, but they are unobtainable for use. These Pokeballs are the 7 Apricorn Balls, Fast, Level, Lure, Heavy, Love, Friend, and Moon Balls, as well as the Safari and Sport Balls. For the returning Pokeballs, there were some changes. Firstly, the Quick Ball now gets a 5x boost instead of just 4x. The Nest Ball had a slight change to its calculations, but it's mostly the same. And the Timer Ball now only takes 10 turns to get the 4x boost, making it far more usable than when it required 30 turns. Overall, it has been a very uneventful generation for Pokeballs, however that will be remedied in Gen 6. Generation 6, the first generation to not introduce a new Pokeball. It also does not bring back any of the missing Pokeballs from Gen 5, and it also leaves the Dream Ball behind. You may be wondering how this generation is more eventful than Gen 5, and well, that all comes down to a new feature involving breeding. From generations 2 through 5, breeding a Pokemon will net you an egg that will hatch into a Pokemon that's in a standard Pokeball. Generation 6 changed this. Now female Pokemon can pass down their Pokeballs when breeding, so while the Apricorn, Safari, Sport, and Dream Balls are unobtainable in these games, you can create new Pokemon with those balls if you transfer some up from older generations. The only Pokeballs that ignore this rule are Master Balls and Cherish Balls. Pokemon in those balls will always produce offspring in a standard Pokeball. Other new features outside of the breeding is that in X and Y, for the first time ever, you can just straight up buy Premier Balls, thanks to the Pokeball Boutique. And that's not all this generation did with this ball. Starting in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you are now given a Premier Ball when you buy 10 or more of any kind of Pokeball, not just the standard regular Pokeball. In terms and changes to how the balls work, they tweaked how nest balls work again, and as of now, this was the last time they tweaked them. X and Y also feature a Pokeball factory that you can visit. This doesn't affect the balls themselves, but it's a cool location. I feel like it deserves a mention in this video going over the Pokeball history. That covers all the major bits for Gen 6. Not a whole lot, but the breeding change was the big thing and such a welcome change. Now we head on to Gen 7 where things continue upwards. Generation 7 is the beginning of a new era for Pokeballs. To start off, they changed the breeding so that when breeding with Ditto, male and genderless Pokemon can pass down their Pokeballs. And if a male and female of the same species breed, there's a 50-50 chance on which parent passes down their ball. This generation also introduced NPC trainers using different types of Pokeballs, which, while is a small feature, is a very nice detail to have. They also introduced a new Pokeball this generation, the Beast Ball. This ball barely looks like a Pokeball, having a blue wireframe around the whole ball, a non-traditional band, and 4 yellow fins. These Pokeballs were designed to catch the new subset of Pokemon, the Ultra Beasts. When trying to catch an Ultra Beast, these balls have a 5 times catch rate boost. However, when used on any other Pokemon, they have a 0.1 times modifier. Also, while talking about the Ultra Beast, every single other Pokeball has a 0.1 times modifier if used on an Ultra Beast, save for the Master Ball. These aren't all the things that Gen 7 did for Pokeballs, as they brought back the Apricorn Balls. However, their maker, Kurt, did not come alongside them, and so in Base Sun and Moon you can only get 1 each, and in the Ultra games you can get 2 each, for you can get a second set if you show a Pokemon from Virtual Console Gen 2 to one of the NPCs in the Game Freak building. While it's not a whole lot, it was a small step towards having all Pokeballs available in one game. Like generations past, some Pokeballs have received some changes this generation, such as the returning Apricorn Balls. First up is the Heavy Ball, which seemingly can't catch a break. While its issue from Gen 4 has been fixed, it now has an issue in Sun and Moon where if the -20 modifier causes the catch rate to be negative, it doesn't adjust it to be 1 but instead 0, making it impossible to catch some Pokemon with it. The Moon Ball has now been changed to only work with Pokemon that specifically evolve with the Moonstone, no longer granting the boost to the entire evolution family, which, with the Pokemon catchable in the Alola games, means the Moon Ball is only effective on Clefairy and Jigglypuff. 2 Pokemon. Next up we have the Net Ball, which now grants a 3.5 times boost as opposed to just a 3 times boost. The Repeat Ball follows suit and gets bumped up to a 3.5 times boost as well. On the flip side, the Dust Ball gets dropped to just the 3 times boost. Before we finish up, we have to talk about Let's Go. Pokeball-wise, Let's Go only features the main 5, due to no Safari Zone. The Safari Ball isn't included, but at least the Premier Ball is here this time. Speaking of the Premier Ball though, Let's Go revolutionized how you go about obtaining them. Up until now, you got 1 Premier Ball no matter how many balls you bought as long as it was at least 10. Now you get a Premier Ball per each 10 you buy, meaning if you buy 30 Pokeballs at once, you are receiving 3 Premier Balls. There's not much else of note for Let's Go. You can change the Pokeball of a Pokemon transferred in from Go. The Master Ball bypasses the Let's Go catching mechanic and has a special animation for the legendaries. That about wraps up the 7th generation. A lot happened for Pokeballs this gen, and yet we're still climbing to the peak. Generation 8 is a massive generation for Pokeballs. Some good, some bad. Due to Pokemon games not being as connected as they used to be, this section is very much going to be talking about each game separately. So, starting with Sword and Shield. No new standard Pokeballs were introduced. However, there is something related to Dynamaxing. When using your Dynamax band, it takes whatever Pokeball you are using and it turns it into a giant Premier Ball-like ball, most likely referencing how Premier Balls are what's used in raids in Pokemon Go. In terms of actual proper balls, every Pokeball obtainable in Gen 7 is obtainable here, including the reintroduction of the Dream Ball, no longer locked to the entry forest and breeding. The Dream Ball is now a proper Pokeball that grants a 4 times catch modifier if the wild Pokemon is sleeping. Not only is it now a proper ball, but it actually has a really good modifier. The caveat is, they're rare. The Dream Ball, alongside the Apricorn Balls and the Beast Ball, are a group of Pokeballs that you only get 1 guaranteed per playthrough. To get more, you have to do the Champion Cup and hope that ball guy rewards you with one when you finish, but that's a very slim chance. And, well, the Dream Ball isn't even in the pool of rewards, so we're just stuck, hoping on distributions to give us more. After a bit, the first DLC for Sword and Shield released and we were introduced to the Cramomatic alongside the return of Apricorns. Feeding the Scamomatic some Apricorns, it gives you a random reward depending on the color of Apricorns you used. Your standard balls were quite common, but there was an about 1% chance that you'd get a Kurt Ball respective to the color Apricorn you used. Not just that though, there were 2 Pokeballs sitting with a 0.1% chance of dropping. You might think it'd be the Dream and Beast Balls, but no. After having not been seen since Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Safari Ball and the Sport Ball had finally returned. For the first time ever, you could use these balls outside of their respective attractions. For some unknown reason, both the Safari and Sport Balls were reduced to only having a 1 times catch rate, dropped from their long-standing 1.5 times catch rates. Regardless, every ball, minus the Park Ball, was available to be used in Sword and Shield. What people long clamored for was finally here, but at a cost. It seems Game Freak played into the ball rarity that was caused by these balls being transfer only for so long, keeping them rare to keep people playing to try and get them for themselves or by trading for them. But at least they were finally all here. When DLC 2 released for Sword and Shield, they finally remedied the missing Dream Ball renewal, having them be a rare drop for Delibird raids. Not ideal, but at least it's something. Also, a special shop where you can trade Dynite Ore for Beast Balls and also Premier Balls. In terms of ball changes, as mentioned earlier, the Safari and Sport Balls dropped from a 1.5 times modifier to just a 1 times modifier. The Friend Ball now only grants 150 friendship upon capture instead of the previous 200, due to the PC no longer automatically healing your Pokemon since you can access it wherever. The Heal Ball technically got a bit more useful. And of course, the Dream Ball. It's now a proper ball and it gets a 4 times boost against sleeping Pokemon. Our next stop in Gen 8 is Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Due to these games being faithful remakes, it has all the same Pokeballs that the originals did. However, the unobtainable ones are still viewable on Pokemon summaries like back in Gen 5 and 6. The game also gives the Safari Ball its 1.5 times boost back. However, that is just for this game because of the Great March. The real most notable Pokeball stuff in BDSP is that the Abercorn Balls were available only as a pre-order bonus. If you pre-ordered from specific retailers, you would get a code for 2 of each of the Kurt Balls. For the first time ever, there's a game where both the Moonball and Skitty, and you can only get said Moonball from a pre-order code. They know that people like Pokeballs for the aesthetics, and abuse that fact to boost pre-orders. And since these games can't connect directly to other Gen 8 games, it means you can't even trade more from Sword and Shield where they are technically renewable. The Kurt Balls are the most wildly inconsistent Pokeballs in this franchise. Shoddy availability, at least one issue almost every time they show up, and even when they do work, half of them don't even have decent uses. People ask for their return since they left, and when they finally give them back, it's in this drip feed format where it seems like they're trying to control stock of a digital item in a game. I know this seems like a weird place to put my boiling point against them, but their inclusion in BDSP is probably the worst thing they've done with them. This video was originally about how weird and wild the history of just the Abercorn Balls were, before I decided to expand it. These 7 Pokeballs have such a past that annoys me enough that they almost got their own video. Before we move on from BDSP, one little fun tidbit. There's a trainer in this game that has a Tropius and a Cherish Ball, referencing the first distribution containing the Cherish Ball, and the first case of a trainer using a Cherish Ball. With all this said, that's really about it with BDSP. Moving on to Legends Arceus, we are sent to the past where the modern Pokeball hasn't been invented, and so we get a whole new collection of Pokeballs. Since we are in the past, marts aren't as common as they will become, and so one of the main ways to get these balls is by crafting them. And these aren't your Kurt Balls where you give them to some man and have to come back the next day. Nah, you make them yourself. Yes, you get to craft your own Pokeballs with the materials you gather on your adventures. It's such a neat addition in my opinion. Now, these Pokeballs are similar, yet different from the ones we know and love. Starting with the Hisui Pokeball, it has that classic red top that you would expect, however the bottom is a more natural wood grain look. The band is also a more generic standard metal color with a big latch on the front and a protrusion up top. Unlike the Pokeballs of our times, these balls only have a 0.75 times catch rate modifier. Up next we have the Hisui Great Ball. It has the expected blue top, but instead of the red protrusions, they are more like paint streaks. The rest of the ball matches the Hisui Pokeball and has the expected 1.5 times modifier. The Hisui Ultra Ball is next, having its black top and yellow H. However, the H wraps around the top protrusion and has some detailing within it near the band. Unlike the previous ball, this ball has that classic white bottom. This ball is slightly better than its modern counter ball, granting a 2.25 times catch rate. For our first truly unique ball from Hisui, we have the Feather Ball. It has a lighter blue top with white wing markings on both sides. This ball flies farther than the standard 3 and flies straight, as opposed to being arced. If it's used on specific flying Pokemon, it has a 1.25 times modifier, but majority of the time it has a standard 1 times catch rate. Much like the Great Ball to the Pokeball, our next ball, the Wing Ball, is an upgraded Feather Ball, having a white top with blue wing markings and an emblem in the center. It carries the same throwing properties and has a 2 times rate against certain flying Pokemon and has a 1.25 times overall modifier. If the Wing Ball is like the Great Ball, then like the Ultra Ball is the Jet Ball, sporting a white and blue top with intricate wing detailing in the front emblem. This ball also carries over the throwing properties of the ones before and grants a 2.75 times modifier against those flying encounters and a 2 times modifier for everything else. This next one might seem familiar, for it is the Hisui Heavy Ball, sporting an all dark gray design with 2 black protrusions on the top. This ball, like its name suggests, is heavy and thus can't be thrown very far. However, if you manage to successfully hit a Pokemon without it seeing you, it gets a 1.25 times modifier. Otherwise, it just has the standard 1 times catch rate. Next up is its upgrade, the Leaden Ball, having a gray bottom while the top now sports the same black as the protrusions, alongside an emblem front and center. This ball still can't be thrown far, however has an unseen modifier of 2 times and a 1.75 times catch rate otherwise. Moving on, we get to the Gigaton Ball. Now it's all black, but with dark gray detailing all over the ball, and the emblem's still there. Still not being able to be thrown far. The unseen bonus is a massive 2.75 times, with the regular modifier is an almost equally as impressive 2.5 times. It is important to note that for the heavy ball line, if used in an actual battle, the ball will always use the unseen modifier. Our last Pokeball from the past is the Origin Ball, sporting a red carved mineral look to it. This ball isn't like a standard Pokeball, as it is a key item and is only used during a cutscene. Only 2 Pokemon are able to be obtained in this ball, that being Dialga and Palkia. Because of this, those 2 Pokemon are the only 2 Pokemon that are obtainable in every single Pokeball. I will not give up hope on one day getting a Pikachu distribution where it's in the Origin Ball so I can get another for my collection. Before wrapping up with Gen 8, there's this very special case, the Strange Ball. Since Legends Arceus only has its 10 Pokeballs, and the other mainline games starting with BDSP don't have the Hisui Pokeballs, instead of just coding all the balls in for transfer-only Pokemon, they created the Strange Ball, an all-green Pokeball that matches the color scheming of Pokemon Home. This Pokeball only shows up on a Pokemon if it's in a game that doesn't have its actual Pokeball coded into it, i.e. a Pikachu caught in Legends transferred to BDSP will be shown as being in a Strange Ball. This ball joins the Master Ball and Cherish Ball in the fact that they can't be bred down. All offspring will be in a standard Pokeball. This ball lives up to its name and is definitely strange. And that finally wraps up Gen 8, by far the biggest generation for Pokeballs, making the Dream Ball a proper Pokeball, making the Apricorn Balls renewable again, even if it's a pain in the ass. It brought back the Safari and Sport Balls, allowing for their long overdue returns to the series. The 10 new Hisui Pokeballs and the Strange Ball make up for the most amount of Pokeballs introduced in a single generation, and probably the stupidest implementation of the Kurt Balls in BDSP. Now it's time to move on to what is currently the final chapter of this story and head on to Generation 9, the 9th generation, which, as of this video, the most recent and containing only Scarlet and Violet. These games did not introduce any new Pokeballs. However, like with Sword and Shield, there's something related to the gimmick. To terrestrialize your Pokemon, you use what is called the Terra Orb, which looks very much like a Pokeball. In terms of proper Pokeballs, at launch the games had every single one present in Gen 8 minus the Hisui Balls and the Safari and Sport Balls. Like in Sword and Shield, you can only get one each of the special balls for free, minus the Love Ball for some reason. However, they are all renewable through either the Academy Ace Tournament, a small chance as a reward, or from auctioning. The auctions are not cheap, and very much not worth it. A debatably worse way to get them than in Sword and Shield. Like most of the gens, there were a few changes to how some Pokeballs work. This time around, it's a pretty short list. The Dive Ball is now changed to having a 3.5 times modifier for Pokemon either in or on the water, due to the change in how encountering Pokemon works. The Lure Ball, due to the removal of fishing, is intended to work like the Dive Ball. However, it is a Kurt Ball, so due to some kind of issue, the ball just never receives a boost and is always just a 1x catch rate. Maybe Gen 10 will start a trend where every Kurt Ball just works properly. That's the list of changes, basically just accounting for the really sad loss of fishing as a mechanic. After some time, the first DLC for Gen 9 released, and in it there's a free Love Ball alongside some other Kurt Balls, but finally there's at least one of each special ball that doesn't require RNG. Nothing much else of note in regards to Pokeballs. That brings us to Gen 9 DLC number 2, the most recent release as of the time of this script. This DLC brought back the Safari and Sport Ball exactly as they were in Sword and Shield. However, this time around, you can get one of each for free. A Safari Ball is one of the Blueberry Pokedex rewards, and a Sport Ball is given after finishing Perrin's side quests. While this is massive on its own, it's not the biggest thing this DLC brought. Inside the League Room, you can get the item printer, a device you feed Pokemon materials and get random items in return. After upgrading it a couple times, you will unlock the Pokeball Lotto function. After every time you use the item printer, there's a small chance you'll get the Pokeball Lotto. If you get the Lotto, it means your next print will be Pokeballs. The pool for this is all the Pokeballs in the game. Yes, you heard that right. You can get any of them, even the Master Ball. And since you can print 10 at a time, you can get a good amount. Now, the rarer the ball, the lower its drop rates are, but since you can just keep running the item printer over and over again, it starts to add up quick. Now, while it's still down to RNG, there's finally a method of getting multiple of all the Pokeballs that isn't super grindy or boring. The rush of seeing the Pokeball Lotto pop up just keeps you going for more. And with that, we have reached the end of Gen 9 and the end of our journey so far. This ended up being far longer than I ever anticipated, but as I kept working on it, the scope just kept increasing, starting as just a video to complain about the Apricorn Balls, to a brief overview of Pokeballs as a whole, to downright describing the looks and functions of each and every Pokeball in the mainline games, all the way from Generation 1 to where we are today, on Pokemon Day this year. We learned that our next mainline game coming will be Pokemon Legends Z to A, yet to be seen if it will use Pokeballs we already have, or if we will get even more new ones, which I kinda hope we do. Pokeballs are such an integral part of this franchise, and such a unique way to give your Pokemon their own character, due to the more recent games bringing back older balls, more so for aesthetic reasons over mechanical ones. Everyone who plays these games has their favorite and least favorite balls. Me personally, I don't like balls with protrusions, however, some, like the net ball, I don't mind. My favorite is the park ball, because I really like the classic Pokeball, and it's just that, but yellow. I spent a lot of time on the research and script scripting part of this video. I hope there isn't anything I missed or got wrong. Bulbapedia and Cerebi were massive helps in the creation of this video, as well as the Wand Company's high-end Pokeball replicas, just for helping on the visual descriptions for some of the balls. If you made it this far, I am extremely thankful. I would love to hear from you down in the comments, even if it's just what your personal favorite ball is. As always, liking the video and subscribing to the channel always helps out a ton. This has been Big Blast 99, and I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have yourselves a goddamn good one.